And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. With Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace, brought to you by our friends over at Kexi Cookies. If you're looking for the gift that won't get regifted, in fact, I would recommend, if you get these for a gift, send them directly to the person that you are sending them to, or gifting them to, because you... Or you're going to need to get doubles because you will not be able to resist the temptation. These cookies are absolutely outstanding. Family-owned business, our very own Pat Gray, for example, his family. And with Black Friday coming up, they've got amazing deals on the way. The best way to grab them is by joining their email list so that you can get early access. If you want to make gifting insanely easy and seriously impressive, these cookies with homemade ingredients you can pronounce, they ship nationwide straight to your door. Looking forward to my Christmas cookie box. Should be getting that here pretty soon. These are outstanding. These cookies are great. KEKSI.com. Use the code DACE15 for an exclusive discount. Code DACE15 for an exclusive discount at Kexi.com. KEKSI. Code DACE15 for an exclusive discount. You can also use my last name to get an exclusive discount on a subscription for next year for Blaze TV for you or someone that is the discerning patriot in your life that you want to gift this to them. In fact, if you use it now, you're with us all through the next election cycle over the next 12 months, the key crucial midterms. Use the code DACE, you get $20 off an annual subscription. It comes down to just about 8 cents or $8 a month, 26 cents a day, I should say. 26 cents a day, $8 a month for a year to get all of our exclusive content, not just the three of us, but every single show's exclusive content here at The Blaze. At blazetv.com/DACE, you get $20 off using the promo code DACE at blazetv.com/DACE. All right, typical Wednesday for you. The final furlong will be joined by our prophet of woe and lamentation and good friend Daniel Horowitz. Of course, we've got an hour of buy, sell, or hold coming your way here soon. But let's kick this thing off as we always do with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by unanimity in Congress, except for one guy. The House and Senate passed a bill yesterday that forces the release of more documents pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein. The vote was 427-1 in the House, with GOP Representative Clay Higgins as the only vote against the measure. It passed unanimously in the Senate. Yesterday at the White House, President Trump, who was once opposed to such a measure, started to spin it in his favor.
Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me, but he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax, and ABC's your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators.
Trump made those comments during a meeting at the White House with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who shared his big picture view of the country's relationship with the United States over the past 20 years.
I feel painful about, the families of 9/11 in America, but, we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden, he used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi relation. That's the purpose of 9/11. So whoever buying that means they are helping Osama bin Laden's purpose of destroying this relation. He knows that strong relation between America and Saudi Arabia, it's bad for extremism, it's bad for terrorism. And we have to prove him wrong and to build our relation, to continue developing our relation. It's critical in the safety of the world. It's critical against extremism and terrorism.
President Trump, during that meeting, said the two had a good conversation about the Abraham Accords. And last night, during a state dinner, made this announcement.
We're taking our military cooperation to even greater heights by formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, which is something that is very important to them, and I'm just telling you now for the first time because I wanted to keep a little secret for tonight. I just heard him say, "Oh, that's nice. That's another point you won today." And signing a historic strategic defense agreement, which we just signed a little while ago. So congratulations. It's out there.
Times they are a-changin'. Speaking about change, a rare Greg Abbott W. The Texas governor announced yesterday he's designated the Muslim Brotherhood and Council on American Islamic Relations as foreign terrorist and transnational criminal organizations. The move, among other things, bans those entities from buying or acquiring land in Texas and authorizes the Attorney General to sue to shut them down. This news comes as a story went viral over the weekend claiming that in the past 2 years, 50 new mosques have been constructed in the Lone Star State. According to Not the Bee, the number of mosques in Texas has grown by 35% since 2010, with over 300 now existing. Insurrection update. These creepy Democrats seem to be greasing the skids for something.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
And the intelligence community.
who take risks each day.
To keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals.
against American citizens. Like us, you all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
But from right here at home. Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
you must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law
Or our Constitution.
Translation, do anything and everything you possibly can to sabotage the Trump administration's policies, and we'll provide you the political cover to do so. Something we haven't gotten to talk about this week are Trump's comments over the weekend on his plan for health insurance reform.
And I've had personal talks with some Democrats. I can't tell you who they are. I just don't want to do that. It's not fair to them. About paying large amounts of dollars back to the people. You know, this was my idea. It came up during that. You know, oftentimes under times of stress, like the shutdown, you come up with great ideas that you wouldn't have thought of before. The insurance companies are making a fortune. Their stock is up over 1,000% over a short period of time. They are taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're not really putting it back, certainly not like they should. So when I see this, and when I've seen this over the last pretty short period of time, I said, why do we just pay this money directly to the people of our country and let them buy their own health insurance? And you know, I made that statement, and I made it a little bit cavalierly, but it sounded good, and everybody has picked it up, including Democrats.
And finally, back at the White House, where President Trump showed Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman his presidential wall of fame, and the duo took their time in front of the portrait of President Otto Penn. I wonder what that conversation sounded like. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends at American Giant. You know, when you pull on a hoodie or t-shirt, you shouldn't have to wonder where it was made and how it was put together. And with American Giant, you won't, because its gear is made right here in the U.S. with top quality materials and with strong and beautiful craftsmanship. So every piece lives up to what made in America really and truly should mean. American Giant, by the way, not just chasing the lowest cost. They're building something that's made to last, something that's not just worth wearing, but worth owning. And when you support American Giant, you're not just buying clothes. You're helping to back a company that believes in its workers, in factories that are here at home and doing things the right way in a world of fast fashion, throwaway apparel. American Giant, they stand apart. Smart, sustainable, timeless, built with pride. Your wardrobe gets upgraded and your values get honored at the same time. Buy American today at American-Giant.com. That's American-Giant.com. American-Giant.com. There is much in this montage that runs counter to the Venn diagram of how if you're my age or older, you assumed things operated politically, and indicate either trouble or paradigm shifts in recognition of the realities of the world as we live in it now. And it probably comes down to who's the one on the disruptive side of the paradigm shift. And is that your side or your guy in terms of how you will respond? For example, and you see this on two major fronts in Aaron's montage. For example, Trump on health insurance. So we're just going to have the government give people the money themselves so that they can then go and shop. Now, if you grew up like I did, for example, as a proud graduate of the Limbaugh Institute of Conservative Studies, if you're a Rush baby like Aaron is, if you got your post-economics graduate degree by reading everything Milton Friedman ever wrote or said, you're going to really struggle with that. And here's the thing. I'm not here to tell you you shouldn't struggle with that. I'm not really sure what I think about it because of what I'm about to say next. Because I think it is entirely possible that as a people, we simply cannot achieve what needs to be done in order to line up with a limited government Bill Buckley, Rush Limbaugh, Milton Friedman understanding of how this world is intended to operate. And we just may be so far gone from a morality standpoint, from a captured institution standpoint, that unquestionably the better solution to what we have now, where government, courtesy of Obamacare, dictates to corporations what things will cost and what things must be covered and who must have coverage. So we don't have a marketplace, we have an exchange. It's entirely possible, while also not being in accordance with our economic theorems, it's entirely possible that the superior option is if we're going to have, because folks, here's what you need to first of all understand. And if we don't agree on this, then we're just not going to agree on anything else. We have a single payer healthcare system. If government is determining the coverage and the rate, I don't know what you want to call that. But that certainly sounds like a managed economy to me. Am I wrong? Is that not the very definition of a managed economy?
Oh, it's a chimeric goulash.
Exactly.
Of health insurance, but it is fundamentally single payer. And
so if Obamacare was essentially created, as many of us said at the time, I screamed it, many of us did, that this is, where did Barack Obama go to school? Columbia University. The infamous professors Cloward Piven, who concocted the theorem in the 60s of creating policies that would not work to overrun the system so that people would then have no choice but to be cornered and to choose statism in America. Where did they teach? Columbia University. Of course, this was intended to be a Cloward pivoting of America's healthcare system to put us in a position where we would just go ahead and go then with a full brunt European style model. And right now we have the worst of both worlds. It could be argued that the only way ultimately out of this, out of ending up in the place where the left set the trap for us to ultimately go. Now, listen, let me say this. There was another way. Republicans could have just repealed this. It's adorable. I'm already in the Christmas spirit. I mean, conceivably they could have, right? I mean, conceivably they could have.
Correct.
Yeah, but they weren't going to do that. I think that's pretty obvious. In fact, when they Kane Bauer in 2017, Speaker Paul Ryan's master plan was actually to put a bill on Trump's desk that kept that repealed the subsidies and the corporate mandate, but kept the individual mandate in place. Because apparently he just wanted to make sure MSNBC had fever dream programming for the next 10 years after we did that. That's every corporatist sellout they've accused us as Republicans of ever being for, and that was Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell's master plan. That was their repeal. That's what they were going to do. Corporations were going to be out, but we were going to pay. I'll take, how do we lose literally every single House seat, like all 435, Alex, for $1,000? That's how you do it right then and there. Every single one of them. You're skunked. And that was where they literally, that's what they were going to do. That was their plan. So since they weren't going to repeal this when they had the chance, our options here are limited to evolve, to get away from being Canada and everywhere else in Europe. It could be argued that the only way out that is conceivably achievable is to have people pay peer-to-peer directly. Of course, it's really still not a free market. Government is still directing coverages and rates to some degree. But now you are more empowered and have more options. I think, though, that if you are bound and determined that the world still has to work the way that you thought it was destined to work in 1985, 95, and 2005, and probably even 2015, you're going to lose your mind at everything I just said. You're going to call me every kind of grifter behind your anonymous screen name on X, and I'm just here to apologize for Air Trump and his complete co-opting of a conservative movement that, listen, never really existed if we're all just being honest with each other. It just was a book-selling industry. Okay, so do I sound like overly enthusiastic about this idea? Am I like, pounding the desk for this? Am I doing that right now?
No.
No. But I'm doing my best to try to understand the realities of the world in which we live. Not the world we want to live, but the world in which we actually live. And so if we're going to have a quasi-command managed healthcare economy, could it be argued the better option, therefore, is just to have government give you the money and have you go and buy it yourself rather than to the health insurance companies? And now you're going through a third party between you and government already. I think it could be strongly argued that that is the case. Could it also be argued that that ultimately creates a situation where down the line then that's a proto form of universal basic income? And since healthcare is the biggest sector of our economy, if we're going to go ahead and set the standard now that government will just give you a prebate of some kind to go out there and buy, a universal healthcare income, right? A UHI. If we're going to argue that that's essentially what government's going to do, then you're essentially setting the stage then to eventually, in the not too distant future, I mean, like maybe an election cycle after the next one, like within a decade, at the latest, we'll just have UBI.
That's
very likely.
That's more likely.
It's very likely. Is it likely that we cannot have any form of economic rebound in the immediate without fixing the healthcare situation and empowering consumers more? Very likely. Is it very likely, though, that this short-term solution in the long run, while it may help us in the 2026 midterms, frankly, in the long run, doesn't
fix any of the fundamental issues.
Right. But see, we've done this for a generation. This is essentially what the last generation of American politics has been. 90 days, same as cash. 6 months, no interest. Take your inflationary construct to pay your bills now and keep passing it on to your children. That's essentially what we've done for a generation now. See, these are moral issues. They're not economic issues. And they never were. Our economics are an extension of our morality. And we don't really have a generation right now. First of all, to ask the younger generation to take the hit is beyond immoral. They're already taking every conceivable cultural and economic hit you could possibly imagine that they had nothing to do with. So that leaves the older generations. So we're talking boomers and Xers. The problem with the Xers taking it is we're the ones now that are at the peak of our income earning potential. We're the ones with all the discretionary income. The last thing you want to do is create a situation where the ones that are at the peak earning potential in the economy at the moment have the least amount of incentive to go out there and produce wealth. That's not good. The boomers are going to say, listen, we paid into this system for decades. Now you're going to pull the rug out from underneath us? They're not wrong about that. That's not immoral. That's not moral. Steve, are you saying there's no good answers here? That is precisely what I am saying. We're just looking for the next brand of credit card just to continue to sustain this in the immediate. And we're just not a people capable of the kinds of long-term solutions that, frankly, sites like The Blaze and shows like this were created to advocate for. We're not that moral people. And we've got a generation of young men on a razor's edge right now, ready to march into the Nick Fuentes abyss. The last thing we want to do is say, hey, guess what, guys? We got nothing for you. Because they're already getting that message. That's why they're thinking about that abyss over there. We're in a tough spot. Which brings us to the Saudi Arabia situation. You know, this idea of mass mutual investment, that sounds rather globalist to me. Because it is. It's essentially what the post-League of Nations, post-war consensus coming out of the UN creation post-World War II. The idea, this is Council on Foreign Relations 101, that if we all are intermingled and invested in each other's economies, there's no real incentive to have old-fashioned warfare anymore. That the Habsburgs were actually on the right. They were doing it right. They just didn't do it enough. There needs to even be a more expansive, multi-hemisphere Habsburg dynasty of nations and elites that mass invest in each other. And then, you know, since everybody is now part of a mass global economic co-op, there's no incentive now for violent disruption via warfare. That's essentially the Council on Foreign Relations. But here's the reality of it. We also we do have a military incentive to have a very good relationship with Saudi Arabia. The more that relationship is solidified, the more that isolates extremist elements within the Middle East, particularly Iran, makes it less likely we're going to have war. Not to mention, I don't know if you guys know this or not, we all need the friggin' money. I mean, we need the money. We need the money. Saudis are talking about investing $1 trillion in America. There's talk of Saudi investors buying Warner Brothers, which is the only movie studio in America right now that's actually making a profit, making movies people actually want to see. We need the money. But then you start asking yourself, well, what's the cultural trade-off of the money? And you look at all the mosques that are being built up in Texas, for example. Is that the trade-off? There's a reason why I've been saying, in fact, there's many, why I have been saying on this show for more than a decade now, we are revival or bust. All the stuff that we were warned about for a generation, it's all here now. And there aren't any easy ways out. For an American people that are conditioned that there's always an easy way out. There aren't any easy way outs. We spent a generation since the counterculture believing, since the summer of love, we have spent the last generation believing that we were the human cheat code. And that the natural laws of economics and morality and legality didn't apply to us. That we were the people, as Barack Obama said, we were the people we've been waiting for. And that we now can be like God, and we have the iron will to bend the universe to our whim and desire and beliefs and projections. And none of that was ever true. And when you break the natural law, it always ends up breaking you. And so if you are ideologically driven, and I say I'm one of them, I'm an ideologue. This period of time, you're going to feel like a person out of time. And the thing is, all your complaints, I don't think any of them are wrong. I just think you're living in the wrong time. They're not achievable. We cannot be the people you want us to be. We can't. And no one's getting elected on, all right, guys, we're going to take a generational dump here. Hunker down for about a decade or so and take your medicine. No one's getting elected on that. Running on that message is essentially what it'll mean they will just skunk us in every election and then we're totally doomed. Well, Steve, if we just take piecemeal what they want to do, we're doomed in the long run anyway. You know what I say to that? You're right. So here's where we are. And this will be a difficult truth, as if the last 15 minutes wasn't harsh enough. This will be a difficult truth for people, particularly even believers in this era of a soft-headed church to absorb. But what you need to understand is this. Christ would much rather have a saltier, feistier, holier church emerge from this country than save this country.
Amen.
But here's the other part about this, though. You need to figure this one out too, though. All right? So pay close attention. I'm going to say even more next. It is actually only that saltier, feistier, and holier church that can save this country. That's the razor's edge we're on here.
A moral and religious people and no other.
Correct. The Lord Jesus Christ would much rather have, and it's really not a choice. First of all, he doesn't have to make such choices. He's the king of the universe. So we're the ones that have to make choices in response to him, not the other way around. And the reality is, his dictum is, I didn't set up an eternal nationalist country. I set up an eternal church. The only transcendent institution I've ever given your species is the church. And frankly, when I look at your country, I'm much more interested, and only singularly interested, frankly, in a holier, feistier, saltier church coming out of your country. But before you get your daubers down to that and think Christianity is your enemy, here's the second part of the equation you need to understand. It is only that saltier, feistier, holier church that could possibly save this country. And it was elements that came out of a saltier, feistier, holier church that founded the country, framed the country, formed the country. And it is only a return to that kind of church that the country will be preserved. Minus that, Aaron used a term there, chimeric. That's another term for Frankenstein. Minus that, the best we can do is just try to hodgepodge solutions that might work for now. And we'll figure the rest out later. The best we can do is the cultural version of living paycheck to paycheck. No posterity, no heritage, no legacy. We're just culturally paycheck to paycheck, and that's now where we are. And just like when you and your budget and you're at home and there's not enough month in the money, you got to make some creative solutions and things when you set out, you didn't want to make these kinds of choices. We are collectively here now. And there is no other way out, minus that very saltier, feistier, holier church. But here's the thing you need to know. To get there is going to require some pruning. And you're watching that happen now, and that is never fun. There's no pruning ride at Disney or the carnival. We're up against the break. When we come back, I think we got to talk about the Epstein vote. You guys okay with that?
Of course.
All right. Let's do that here when we return. What it may or may not mean. And there's one thing about Donald Trump that keeps being proven true over and over and over again, and I'll explain on that too when we come back. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at the ChristianCollegeGuide.com. It's the free, easy-to-use resource that does the work for you. If you want to have someone you care about, or you're that someone that you care about, looking at Christian education, yes, you want all the basics such as acceptance rates, tuition costs, academic majors, but you want more than that, because that's why you're looking at a Christian college or university. So what you're also looking for is the campus policies, the faith commitments, the on-campus spiritual life and formation. You're looking for those factors and criteria as well. The Christian College Guide surveys over 250 Christian colleges and universities to provide that information to you in the definitive guide to Christian higher education, and it's completely free. So if you or someone you know considering a Christian college or university, go to christiancollegeguide.com, create a free user profile, and get started today. That's christiancollegeguide.com. All right, before we move on to the Epstein files, I dropped a lot there on making more deals with the mostly Islamic world, particularly the Saudis. Also, Trump's proposal just to give people the money themselves instead of the subsidies for Obamacare. Just give them the money themselves, go out there and choose their own plan. Okay. What do you guys think on what I just said? Subtract, multiply, divide, question, comment, or insult. The floor is yours.
I kind of alluded to this the other day. If this was some sort of, this plan for health insurance was some sort of Trojan horse to start to get rid of some regulations, because that's what I'm saying here. If you don't start to address the regulations, this is 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It really doesn't fix the fundamental problems. The mandates and regulations with the Affordable Care Act are what makes it so unaffordable. And it was always designed this way. Mm-hmm. The Affordable Care Act was always designed.
It was meant to bring us here.
To get us to this point. And howdy doody, we got to this point less than 20 years after its introduction. It was always meant to get us to this point. If some sort of grand bargain got us to the place where Democrats politically do not think that they can pull the trigger yet on the total cloud pivoting of American health insurance and its industry and American health care, they don't have the political capital to do that yet. And so they're kind of playing chicken right now. They will give some tepid reduction or even some real reduction in regulations and mandates. Like, we're not going to do every single pre-existing condition here. If you have pre-existing conditions that are a result of your lifestyle, insurers don't have to cover those anymore. Things of that nature. I can see how that would actually be a step in the right direction, putting money right in people's pockets. But if it's not going to be that, I can actually see how this would actually increase the cost overall, one way or another, of health insurance, because you're adding another layer, another step in between people getting quote unquote health insurance. Mm-hmm. Because you're right now you're going directly to the insurance companies and putting it in people's wallets. That's another step. So unless there's some sort of real degradation of the mandates and regulations, I don't know how this fixes anything. It's just kind of putting lipstick on a pig.
The kind of grand bargain you're articulating would have been possible in another era. The problem is you don't have a critical mass of Democrats now that aren't trying to intentionally wreck the system to install Marxism. Most of those kinds of Democrats have either become Republicans or hang around with Bill Maher. But there's not a voting block of them that you could strike that kind of bargain of lessening regulation on our side to provide kind of a universal healthcare income on theirs. There's no that Democratic Party doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, and so it's with the intent of wrecking the system now. But you're right. If that did exist, then there would be a bargain to be struck here, particularly with a deal maker like Trump as president. Todd, what do you think?
Well, we're not allowed to be spiritually hopeless, but that monologue was appropriately hopeless in terms of the game that we're being played. We need to be honest with ourselves. And when you said, the economy can't be fixed unless we fix healthcare, you're absolutely right. But we're in a loop where the opposite is true as well. We can't fix healthcare without fixing the economy. All the inflationary pressures that we talk about on things like eggs, everybody, all those docs, all those execs, yes, healers, but folks, they got into this, for the boat and the stuff, just like a lot of other people get into a lot of other things. And all the reforming on the system is if it cuts into their bottom line, they're not going to be so happy with that. So then the alternative is, well, we just have to acknowledge that this system sucks and we have to explode it.
Correct.
Well, yeah, but I mean, which is what you would think would happen after, let's say, can I hypothetically spitballing here, the so-called healthcare experts, doctors, and, all kinds of leaders, the ones who are making the financial trains running time. Let's just say for the sake of argument, we had something like a pandemic and it turned out to be really fake and gay.
And so we printed off 80% of all bills in circulation in result to such fake and gay pandemic.
And maybe so we'd learn some lessons from that.
Yeah.
And therefore proceed according. See, this is what we can't. Aaron's point, I'm just putting that on steroids. We don't really want to fix things. There's no real tough love here. There's no really going into AA and doing the hard work on this thing. You're all crackheads. And you like being crackheads.
No one goes to AA until they've crashed.
Yes.
No one walks in there with a mild drinking problem. You know what, guys? I got a Paula violation. Okay, it's not until they've got behind the wheel. Okay, I was walking around with an open container. No one goes to AA after that. They go to AA after they got pulled over with a DUI. Their life flashed before their eyes, or maybe they hit somebody, if not a tree, on their own. That's when they go.
And if
they crash.
COVID can't make you crash, and I didn't even mention those so-called experts again. They transed your kids and they chopped them up in those same hospitals. We're not ready, man. This is why Isaiah, I don't know what it is. Where would you yet be struck? If it wasn't those two things, I have no idea.
For over 40 years, SelectQuote has been one of the most trusted brokers in insurance, helping more than 2 million Americans secure over $700 billion in coverage. Their mission? It's simple. To find you the right insurance policy for your unique needs. They shop, you save. So unlike other one-size-fits-all insurance companies, SelectQuote's licensed agents, they work for you. In as little as 15 minutes, they'll work for you to compare policies from top-rated carriers to find you the best fit for your health and your budget. And again, they work for you and for free. No medical exam, no problem. They partner with providers offering same-day coverage up to $2 million without needing to visit your doctor. You've got high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, other pre-existing conditions. They can help you with policies designed to address that as well. So get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at selectquote.com/Steve. Again, that's selectquote.com/Steve. So on the Epstein files, I've had numerous people in my circle today and just listeners ask me, the way this has all worked out, do I think that this was just a plan by Trump for the last few months all along to draw the Democrats out and then say once the Democrats have gone out and made a huge play over the Epstein files, then go ahead and drop it on them? You're right, let's go ahead and release them all and blow up their credibility. I don't. And I can tell you, I know people very close to the President of the United States who were quite dismayed. And the kind of people that would know if such a plan existed, and they were quite dismayed this summer when the president just kind of suddenly changed his tune back in July and said after trumpeting the release of these things forever, all of a sudden now it's not a story. Why do you care? Move on. No one needs to see anything. And I promise you, they would be people, they'd be names you would know and people who would know if there was a plan. That being said, though, I understand why people ask questions like this, because look at the way this has ultimately turned out. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries out there just doing Francis Collins-like guitar numbers to the Epstein files, only for us to find out he was soliciting donor requests from Jeffrey Epstein after his sex offense, his first sex offense conviction. We find out a Democrat member of Congress from the Virgin Islands, which is I believe the jurisdiction of Epstein Island is in the Virgin Islands, I believe, is literally getting dictation from Epstein during a committee hearing on what questions to ask. And so I can see why people are wondering, was this just part of a very well-coordinated plan? It wasn't. I can promise you it wasn't. But there's an undeniable truth in American politics, and it's true no matter really who's running the Republican Party, that eventually Republicans, you can count on them to preemptively surrender. Now, with the current people in charge, their surrender line is not as preemptive as the previous people. But I think we've all been dismayed, watching that video of Democrats telling soldiers to disobey orders. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting here just knowing Trump's just going to obey literally anything a federal judge says, right?
Yes.
Remember in his first term when he told the Joint Chiefs to kick the trainees out of the military, and Milley and the Joint Chiefs said, yeah, we're not doing that, and no one got fired and no one paid for that, right? That kind of stuff, right? Okay. So the current people's surrender line is way less preemptive than the old people, but let's face it. What's that meme going around about Pam Bondi? I'm seriously thinking about finally arresting somebody. It's November 19th. Okay, lady. All right. So you can always count on Republicans to preemptively surrender. But undeniable truth of American politics, number 2. You can always bank on Democrats then completely overreaching in response to that surrender. And this dynamic plays out over and over and over and over and over again. We lost 40 House seats because the Republicans preemptively surrendered in 2017 and 2018 on repealing Obamacare. Healthcare was the number one issue in the 2018 midterms. We lost 40 House seats. Democrats then overreact, steal an election in 2020. What ends up happening in 24? Then they way overreact. We're going to arrest our opponents. We're going to make you take a poisonous jab to have a job, like Mark of the Beast level stuff. What ends up happening? Trump and Republicans swept into office in 2024. They way overplayed their hand on Epstein, to the point now that Chuck Schumer yesterday, as the Republican House is voting to release the Epstein files, is out there doing a press avail. What is Trump hiding? Like a clown, a total clown. And he said that in response to a question from a member of his own media saying, why didn't you guys do anything with the Epstein files for the 4 years when you were in control? Well, what's Trump hiding? Well, I mean, the House at his direction is voting to release the files. Now, listen, this release will probably have several disappointments. I've already seen Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch going through the language of the legislation. He's like, I'm still going to have to sue these guys like a half a dozen times to get really everything we want. But if you think it's a coincidence that Lawrence Summers out there resigning from, austere boards in anticipation of the release of these files, I've got some swampland to sell you in Arizona. Okay. So you can always count on Republicans to preemptively surrender, and then you can always count on Democrats to way overreach in response to that, thus self-generating their own backlash. And that's what's happening right now. And not to mention, there is literally evidence of just providential anointing on the fact no politician in American history has been more benefited by who his enemies are than Donald Trump has been. Which is why a lot of times it seems like this was some seventh dimensional chess that was 9 months in the making. No. It's just the paradigm. What did I used to say in Trump's first term? The cake's not any different. The frosting is just zanier. Always count on Republicans to preemptively surrender. Always count on Democrats to way overreach and overreact in response to that surrender and thus generate their own backlash. So after several months of pitting himself against his own base, causing division within his own base, it ends up now that the Democrats did swoop into that moment, way overreach, way overextend themselves, showed no restraint whatsoever, and now they look like total clowns. Gentlemen, your thoughts before we get out of here for this hour.
They do look like total clowns, but again, we have Democrats right now who were happy to dishonorably discharge members of our military if they didn't get the poisonous jab, are now telling those same military members to disobey orders. Yet, almost unanimously, this entire Congress, full of those kinds of people, is voting for this kind of thing. now Republicans do all own this. If this goes the way of Speaker of the House Johnson, where he just keeps talking about all the redactions, I'm sorry, whatever secrets that need to be hidden supposedly in the name of national security, our national security depends way more on getting the truth on anything than whatever he thinks national security secrets could be exposed by this Epstein thing. What if the green light has been totally given and we still find out next to nothing? I know what you're saying with Summers. Steve, how many people know who the hell Larry Summers is?
The Epstein file crew does, but outside of that group, you're right. Yes. We're in the end game now, man. This Congress just voted unanimously to say, show me. Are you like, I can't wait. It's like we're opening Al Capone's vault. How did that one turn out too? I want to make sure Aaron's got time. Go ahead, Aaron. We got about a minute.
I'm relieved at this point. I believe the Department of Justice now has like 30 days to release these documents. I have great confidence in Pam Bondi that things that should not be redacted will not be redacted.
See, that's how you know this wasn't a plan from the beginning, because too many people in Trump's own orbit hurt their own credibility. Trump didn't, because, I mean, Trump's relationship with his base is eternal at this point. But like literally everybody else in periphery of that orbit, all their credibilities are hurt by what went on the last few months. So that's how you know this wasn't some kind of like well-coordinated plan. Tell me whose position of strength. If you want to take Thomas Massie out in a primary, the way to do it is to not give him the moral high ground on the Epstein issue and make it look like he kicked your ass, frankly. And you're doing what he asked you to do 5 months ago that you could have done all the time. That's how you know it's not a plan. Thomas Massie's political stock is higher now than it was 2 months ago. And several people not named Donald Trump in that orbit tested their own credibility as evidence of Aaron's last comments as a result. That's how you know it wasn't a plan. But there is a plan. Republicans always preemptively surrender. Democrats always overreach in response to that surrender and create their own backlash. And that's the plan you're seeing play out now. All right, we're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast alongside Todd Erzen and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. We are brought to you by our friends over at Preborn. You know, when Mary said, "Let it be done to me according to your word," she did not know what her future would look like. She only knew that saying yes to life, yes to God's plan, would come with uncertainty, with risk and sacrifice. And through that simple act of courage, we now have the time of year that we all celebrate every year, 2,000 plus years later. And she brought forth the Savior of the world into the world. Well, today, countless other mothers face their own versions of this moment. They can sit in a clinic, and there's two kinds. There's the one that'll treat you as human chattel, and your baby as something to be discarded, and your soul as something to be scraped. And then there's the preborn clinic, where they will confront you gently, but it will be a confrontation. They're going to show you an ultrasound of your baby, often for the first time, so you can hear that heartbeat. You can realize it's not an unviable tissue mass, it's another person. And then you've got that moment right there to say yes to life and step into the light. And if you do, then preborn is there. Free ultrasounds, maternity care, diapers, baby clothes, counseling, car seats, sometimes up to 2 years after the baby's birth for this new family to get them started off on the right foot. And they do it all for nothing. Of course, none of it, though, is free. That's where you and I come in. We make it so with our generosity. You can continue to be as generous as an audience as you've already have been here at The Blaze And that's why we've kept this going with Preborn for the last few years. Let's keep it going even longer. A lot of you are looking at great end-of-year giving options. How about this 5-star rated charity at preborn.com/Steve? Make that tax-deductible gift today. For as little as $28, you can fund an ultrasound that could save a life and maybe a soul as soon as today. That's preborn.com/Steve. Again, preborn.com/Steve. You can also let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't forget, you can also subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you are a podcast listener, thank you. Please hit subscribe, or on Apple iTunes follow. That's how you'll know for sure. Every time we do a new episode, it's right there in your podcast feed. And you can also leave us a 5-star review. Those help the show to grow. Tens of thousands of you have done that for the program. Thank you for each and every one of those. Thank you as well for each and every one of these that we're about to see. Your submissions for buy, sell, or hold. Aaron has those submissions. He selected the ones we will discuss. Todd and I have yet to see them. We're going to react to them in real time right now. We'll get through as many of these as we can. What remains, we will discuss in the overtime today for subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. And of course, you can buy, Todd, you can sell. If for any other reason, though, you choose to hold, then you have debased yourself. And you require very, very stern discipline for having done so. So you will further debase yourself by receiving stern discipline from your true dom and master, Lindsey Graham. You ready?
Well, that's kind of what the last hour felt like, quite frankly. So maybe I'm prepped for it. I don't know, but
it was a little sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Yes, it was. And
that also, though, helped that sermon and sermons like it also helped create this very country. So maybe we kind of need more.
I'm counting on that. Yeah. I'm counting on it.
All right, let it rip, Aaron.
Yeah, there's something we're going to be talking about that kept me up last night. I didn't even know it was a submission till this morning. Apparently, we're simpatico. We'll be talking about that later. But first, we'll go to Dacian memes for pumpkin spiced queens, who said the Babylon Bee joke about Megyn Kelly, regardless of if you think it's funny or not, has become a litmus test of sanity and if you can distinguish between a joke and a call for murder.
I'm going to let you take this first.
I'll buy. You know, I don't. It wasn't remarkably edgier than a bunch of stuff. You know, you never know when it's going the button and the moment are just going to create the fingernails on the chalkboard that. So but I really didn't. It was well within line of the stuff that the Babylon Bee has done for a very long time now. So, yeah, I'll buy.
All right, I'm going to sell. Here's why. I think if you want to, and in most of these debates, not all of them, but in many of these debates, I end up usually on the side of Seth and Joel and the guys at the Babylon Bee. There are debates with the so-called woke right, which is a term I have no idea what it means. Not all the time, but most of the time, I tend to be on their side in these debates. However, if you're going to wade into these debates, and I say this as somebody that loves these guys and knows them, if you're going to wade into these debates at the level, particularly Seth has, all right, and you're going to punch people as hard as particularly Seth has, or Joel for that matter, who I know even better and love to death. If you're going to do that, then do not get sheepish about people punching you back. If you're going to say stuff like, hey, what you guys believe is nihilistic, what you guys believe leads to dark places, then don't be surprised when you put that label on people that you're in a debate with when they try to reattach that label to you, particularly in a moment like this. The Babylon Bee should have never ran that joke, in my view. Or if it was going to, then it doubled down on its mistake by taking it down. You either run that joke, and when it gets critiqued, you defend it in the context in which you meant it, or you don't run it because you realize probably not the moment to be joking around about the deaths and murders of high-profile figures on the right under any circumstances or context. And I'm fine with either one, okay? But what you can't do is run it and then take it down. Because what you actually just did is you agreed with the premise of those who said this is way out of bounds, like Oran, for example, way out of bounds, and you're essentially saying you want Megyn Kelly dead. If there wasn't at least some sensitivity to that, you would have left it up. So if you're not going to own it, don't do it. That's kind of my motto in general. If you're not going to own it, then don't do it. And I think that if you want to hit people as hard as Seth and Joel have, and again, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time in these fights, I would agree with them. But if you're going to hit people that hard, expect them to hit even just as hard back. So I sell.
Moving on, we go to Trumpet Tiger, who has this: given recent events on the right in the angelic betting markets have revival at 25%, bust at 75%. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Betting markets, the angelic betting markets. Revival at 25%.
Is this a Catholic thing? Are you guys permitted angelic? Because I can promise you in a Protestant church, if someone stood up and referenced angelic betting markets, it'd be their last time in the pulpit, probably.
He's not Catholic. So.
Okay. I'm going to sell. Because again, this is where the counterintuitive nature of the kingdom of God comes into play. Because I actually could make a strong case that if we are as cornered and screwed as I articulated in the first hour, that is actually how we get to a path of revival. All right? You dial up the suffering. You make people feel cornered. Okay? How many people were in church on 9/10/2001? And how many were in church on 9/12/2001? How many people were in church on 9/9/2025? How many people were in church on 9/11/2025? These are inflection points. Charlie's murder, 9/11. When we are confronted with a level of evil and or suffering, we can't digest in our flesh, and it often will. It's often those moments that cause us to look up, not when we think we just have minor fixes here to address. So, I would make the case the opposite is true. I think the tougher conversation is, will revival lead with the outcome many people suspect or hope for? I think that's way more debatable, way more. But I would much rather have that debate, and I'm way more hopeful about that conversation than the current one. Your thoughts, Todd?
I'm selling 25% is too optimistic.
Nice.
Michael Relicki says, many of us felt like Charlie's assassination was, in fact, the turning point he advocated for. However, with evil currently being exposed in recent dark events, including elections, it has become increasingly obvious we are actually still in an inflection point. We will continue to coddle evil under the idol of niceness, or we will bite the bullet of hard truths to restore a moral and religious nation.
No, I mean, you did a great job of articulating many of Elon Musk's sentiments that he has expressed over the last few months on his own platform. You did a good job of quantifying that. And I mean, Musk essentially keeps repeating over and over again, we're going to toxic empathy and nice ourselves into not having a civilization anymore, right? So I don't disagree with that. There's a reason why I said last hour, the Lord is much more after a saltier, feistier, more holy church emerging from this country than saving it. But it is also only that feistier, saltier, holier church that can save the country. So you're basically making the same point from another direction, so I buy.
Yeah, there's 130 Democrats right now that are, going right back to the well and supporting some manner of transgendered cause, while in Don't Mess with Texas, we're playing defense way after the fact while all these mosques have been established. I mean, this whole inflection point thing, how many inflection points have we had now since 2020? We don't care. We don't want to be a spirit-filled people. We just don't want to be. The church does not want to be the church.
That I agree with. The first part, I think it's too early for that. But the second part, I completely agree with, which is why I said when you watch Charlie's memorial, you saw the Holy Spirit bypass the church. And the Spirit has done that several times throughout history. Several times throughout history. The most vivid example, a carpenter from Nazareth. We're just going to bypass the Sanhedrin and the religious system, and now we're going to do a new thing. This has happened and had to happen several times. But I do think it's too early to give up on the people. I'm not, saying to be, wholly optimistic either. But we are instinctively more confrontational with evil now than we were a few years ago even. I don't see how that's even a debatable point. So that's progress. May not be enough, might be too slow, might be too late. But I want to see that through with the people first. But in terms of the church, wholeheartedly agree.
Next, we go to China Compass. Says China is currently doing to Japan, canceling flights and imports over Taiwan support, what the U.S. should have been doing to China since at least 1989 after Tiananmen Square. In other words, Chi-Coms believe in their worldview more than we believe in ours.
Yeah.
In many respects, the conversations the Bush era had about China in the late 80s is not much different than leading up to the most favored nation status in 1990, I think it was, is not much different than what the president said about the Saudis just in the last 24 hours. That's why I also said, if you trust the people cutting the deals and they're your people, then you think it's ingenuity, right? Then you think it's realpolitik. Then you think it's shrewd. If you don't, you think it's a globalist sellout. Really comes down to, for example, and that by the way, that doesn't make you a hack. That's just human nature. I mean, if you're handing the ball off in an NFL game to Saquon Barkley 40 times, very few Eagles fans are probably sitting there screaming at the TV, why are we so conservative? You know what I'm saying? Because it's friggin' Saquon Barkley. If you're handing it off to, Timmy Barkley from, Mount Vernon, Iowa, probably not going to have much success handing it off to Timmy Buckley, right? Or Barkley, no one knows who the hell he is. Just some, rando pasty from rural Iowa. He's doomed. And that's where your fans start screaming, what are we doing here? So most things come down to the execution of the talent involved. Most things do. All right? Most things do. That doesn't mean you're on either side, it doesn't mean you're hypocritical or have a double standard. I'm just saying, though, that if you maintain ideological rigidity in this era, you're going to be very, very frustrated. And it doesn't even necessarily mean you're wrong. You're just going to be very, very frustrated because much of the country doesn't believe it can afford and the luxury of ideological rigidity. You have any thoughts on that since I've brought it up for the second time today?
Well, it can't afford the opposite either. I mean, ultimately, if your default is as long as I get mine, which is where that sports bro analogy that you just did ultimately goes, I mean, that is doomed. I mean, we need to have a calculus that gets outside of our current atomization. That's why the people are the problem. I mean, there's plenty of skilled people here. There's plenty of talent, to your point. It's just that, again, our fundamentals. This is a football stuff. You can't, even if you tried, people, they don't want to do that. They are flat out passing on the stuff that thousands and thousands of years of history has told you. If you pass on this, you will die. And the people don't care.
Correct. So if, let's say you're trying to get elected next year, given that, Aaron, you disagree that that's largely the backdrop of who we are as a culture?
Yep.
We all agree. Okay. So you're trying to get elected next year. You're going to run on that. I mean, you can be very principled. It's not wrong. Odds you're winning anywhere except where you've got a 7 to 9 to 1 voter registration advantage would be what? Dean Wormer, 0.0, you thinking?
I know this, but I also know that winning just to win an office ultimately, at some point, is a fool's errand as well.
Completely agree with that too. But then the other problem we have is we can be really rigid on this and lose everywhere, which means then the other side gets in and we lose on absolutely everything. I'm not saying, again,
what are we being really rigid? You're right philosophically.
Yeah.
What are we really being rigid on? What?
Well, that part's true too. I'm essentially addressing the last people left in our audience, still hoping, I won't say bitterly clinging because I'm with you, but still hoping that we're going to be a limited government party and movement again.
I mean, philosophically, of course I'm with you on that. I'm just saying pick the issue. That's the philosophy. Pick the issues then. I mean, what are we going to stand for? What is our closed hand, which you've long made famous and rightly so, even when you were a younger man? What are we fighting for?
I don't think it's great policy what Trump is suggesting on healthcare. I do think it's great politics because I don't think Democrats will take the deal. I think him saying there's Democrats calling me, but I won't give their names, I think is negotiating BS, and I'm fine with it because I don't think any Democrat will take the deal because they want to crash the system. That was the entire original intent, what they voted for. Pardon me. They didn't lose 1,000 seats after enacting Obamacare in the next 2 election cycles to then turn around and say, when they're this close to crashing the entire healthcare system, which was its stated goal, they're not going to turn around and after taking that hit, when they took the hit up front and now they're about to get the huge payment on the back end, they're then going to turn around to say to Donald Trump, age 80, about to be lame ducked, they think anyway, you know what, Don, let's make a deal. They're never doing that. Trump, I think, obviously knows this. And so his goal is to then go to the American people and say, hey, I tried to cut this deal for you. These Democrats wouldn't give this to us. Okay. And so when is the next enrollment period for everybody's health care? When's the next one? You guys know? When is it? When does everybody have to enroll? Every year at what time?
It's December, isn't it?
November.
Or November.
November. What do we have next November? What 2 things will converge the 1st of November of next year? Re-enrollment for your health care and what?
The election.
The election. And so what Donald Trump is setting up now is a messaging battle. He knows the Democrats are not going to take this deal. He knows that. So he is setting up a messaging battle saying, because he also knows the Republicans aren't going to, he knows Republicans won't repeal Obamacare. And he knows Democrats won't take the deal.
Of course.
Okay, so he is setting up a triangulation messaging strategy of, I tried to create a system that empowered you rather than these health insurance companies, but the Democrats sided with the corporatist health insurance companies over you. That is what he is setting up. This healthcare cycle is lost. We're already through the whole month of enrollment right now. It's November the 19th. All right, the enrollment period is almost over for most people for the year. So that die is cast. All right, this cost will be absorbed. I just had my healthcare call on the way back from Chicago Monday. I'm paying more too. Okay. So we've all had these calls. This is all where we are. And so that goose is cooked, man. And so this is about setting up next year's enrollment period, which begins right about the time we're going to start voting in the midterms. And Trump is trying to make the case here. I'm the one that tried to fight for you guys, and the Democrats fought for the health insurance companies instead. That's what's going on here.
Well, then if that's the plan, why wouldn't you tell? I think it's still over 50% of Americans get their health insurance through their employers. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you just say, instead of you have to spend this on health insurance, everything that your employer is spending on your health plan, you just get that in form of a wage, and you can go out and purchase your own health insurance from there.
Because you
get rid of the regulate. Why wouldn't you make
totally in favor?
Why
of
wouldn't
that.
you make the entire? Let's just go the full Monty.
Because then the Democrats turn right around and say, we can't trust these people. Young people won't buy health care. The cost will go up because they won't buy into the system. And the old people, we'll be right back to why this is why we needed Obamacare in the first place. The American people can't be trusted to take care of themselves and let alone each other. That's what they'll say. That was the entire rationale for Obamacare to begin with.
If a populist cannot beat back that message, then there is no fixing this.
I think there's a very strong case there's no fixing this. And we're literally just trying to survive our way of life as much as we can, election cycle every 2 years as much as we can. That's it. We're just clinging here. Okay. The Titanic has hit the iceberg, guys. Okay. And so all we're trying to do here is preserve ourselves for as long as we possibly can. Because there's no other place for us to go. There's no other landmass to reestablish, to terraform. There's no place else there's no place for 21st century Puritans to go and hit the Control-Alt-Delete and start over.
But then we'll never get to revival or bust.
We may never.
Because
that's the trap.
The suffering that you talked about that it takes for people to realize what is required, will be avoiding and kicking the can down the road.
There's a possibility of that.
I do have an option. And this is what I was talking about earlier that kept me up last night thinking about this. And I had no idea that this was a submission until I saw it this morning. Andrew Sexton says, after listening to Steve and Glenn blackpill for the last couple of weeks, I don't know if Glenn's been blackpilling, but
it's got to be bad if Glenn is blackpilling.
The best thing for the world would
He's
be...
a lot nicer than me.
The best thing for the world would be a Carrington event level EMP to make us all Amish. So the Carrington event, that massive solar storm from the 1800s that scientists say likely if it happened today would knock out pretty much our entire electrical and electronics grid for months, if not years.
So
I'm a buy too. As much pain and suffering as that would cause, the portals that we have opened with, I mean, we were talking about this the other day with the internet, the portals to hell that this has opened up.
Yep.
If we had a reprieve from that for at least in the West for a few months, a couple of years, yes, I understand all of the second and third order events, and yes, this would be a really hard event, but.
So I'm fine with your buy of it, okay? And I would probably, if you made me choose, I would choose buy too. So just for giggles, let me make the case for the sell. Because while we can foresee that God would use such an event to bring something like this forth, okay? For example, if on the outskirts of, Aaron, let's pretend Todd is not here for a minute. If we were not on the outskirts of the bubonic plague and the Crusades, and we had a whole bunch of widows whose 25 and 30-year-old husbands had either succumbed to disease or war, and we didn't have a Catholic bishop going around telling those widows to take their last mite, literally, and put it into a piece of tin to renovate St. Peter's Basilica so that maybe their husbands and brothers could get purchased their souls out of hell. If we were in a period of relative peace and tranquility in Europe, how much less of an audience do you think Luther would have? Because I think it's substantially so. Okay. And so let me give another example. Now Todd, you can be back in the conversation again. You're hired again. Okay. If there were no Holocaust, odds that there's a UN charter establishing the nation of Israel on May 15th, 1948.
Very low.
Very low. So we don't do evil so that good may come, right? Okay. God in his sovereignty can use our evil, even the most macabre, ghoulish evil we can concoct, like the Holocaust, and fulfill Romans 8:28. He can still do that. Okay. But we don't know that he will do that either. So we don't do evil or root for evil so that good may come.
And just to be clear, this is not an EMP weapon. This is just a natural EMP.
Correct. So again, I'm not trying to Jesus juke anybody. Okay. I don't want people to be theological. I know you guys don't mean this, but we have a lot of people in our audience that are getting into theology for the very first time. And I don't want them to get to believe that our show believes we tempt fate by doing bad stuff so that sets God up to fix it for us. That's not what we do. Okay. But in his sovereignty, can God do that? Absolutely, he can. Doesn't mean that he will, but he can, which is why even in moments of despair, this is why J.D. Vance saying a few weeks ago, despair is a sin. This is why we're not permitted despair, because even in the midst of the deepest darkness we are capable of as a species, and nothing's darker than executing God when he came here to save us. Even in the midst of that, in his sovereignty, God can make a way and make it right. All right. But the operative phrase there is God can. Do not, Amy and I, the first time we did a mentoring ministry together years ago, a young lady came to us in the couples group we were mentoring of young couples. And she specifically wanted to make the case that she was going to date someone and move in with a guy without being married to him who didn't have a job and that her kid didn't like because she liked him and she was lonely. And she was convinced that, God would then fix it for her mistake for her. Look at the way you guys started your relationship and look what God did. And you don't want to do that in your theology. Okay. Do not do bad stuff. Amy and I did not shack up and do all this bad stuff, hoping God would intervene. We did it because we were estranged from God and didn't fear him and didn't know him. So we don't tempt bad stuff with the hope something good will come. That being said, is it very possible that God would use such an event to his glory to draw us closer to him? You betcha.
The second corollary here, in the context of the Noahic covenant, where God promised to never destroy the earth by flood again, is it in the character of God to allow such a global catastrophe? Because what we're talking about here is a global catastrophe, not on par with the flood, but only comparable to the flood. Not even like the Mount Tambora volcanic eruption that had global consequences. Not even that, I don't think, would measure up to a Carrington level event of what we're talking about. Is that in the character of God to allow it to happen? I happen to think that's a buy, yes.
Yeah, it can be, sure. Because again, the character traits of God transcend ours, because he has the ability to make things happen we cannot. To know things that will happen, we will never know, right? Okay? And so we have to be careful not to personify God as he is not a reflection of our image. We are a reflection of his.
I think it's the character of God because it's about ultimately smashing idols. The nothing you said is instantly saying everybody is going to die except for this handful of people. They're actually, quite frankly, at the outset, everybody's going to have an opportunity to realize the stakes and live accordingly or not. And then if the answer is not, there is going to be death. But I don't think it's outside the character of God either.
Then buy, sell, or hold. If you are a believer, or really anybody, but especially a believer, you should prepare for such eventualities.
Sure. Yeah. You should trust that, God does allow a measure of suffering for his glory. Yeah, you bet.
Correct.
All right, we have a lot more to get to. We probably have another 20 plus submissions. We will go mega rapid fire in the overtime, or Steve will just tell me, pick the best 10, and I'll pretend to pick the best. I'll pick the best 10 if he asks me to.
Nice. No, we'll do them all. We ended up getting into we took a bit of a detour there on a theological nuance, and maybe I belabored the point. Wouldn't be the first time. But I just wanted to make sure people were not confused by what we were advocating. Okay? Because again, a lot of us are new to this stuff and thinking about it in a civic way for the very first time. That's all. So we'll honor your submissions and give them the time they deserve later today in the overtime. blazetv.com/Deace. We'll honor Daniel Horowitz's time, and he'll honor ours next. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Beam, who answered the age-old question I know many of you have asked. What will it take for Steve Deace not to have to get up and pee in the middle of the night? Well, Beam Dream Powder is your answer. It is the science-backed little hot cocoa, not loaded with sugars and carbs, that you can take before bedtime with ingredients proven to help you get a better, more restful night of sleep. That's what worked for me. It can work for you as well. All right. And right now is their best offer of the year, but only for the next 48 hours. Right now, you can get 50% off with my offer code Steve. Just grab their Dream Powder for just $32.50. That breaks down to $1.08 per night for the best sleep of your life. Go to shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve for this special offer. Don't miss out. This is the lowest price Dream has ever offered anywhere. It's likely to sell out quickly. All right, so go to shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve. Get up to 50% off during Beam's cyber sale. Grab the Dream for just $32.50. But again, it's just that price until it sells out. $1.08 for your best night's sleep tonight. I think it's worth it. Go to ShopBeam, like laser beam, BEAM, shopbeam.com/Steve, and try Beam today. Shopbeam.com/Steve. We welcome in the prophet of woe and lamentation. And Daniel, I am guessing because you were taping your show and doing your work, you did not hear much of the show in the first hour before you came on, okay? And we discussed both the meetings with the Saudis yesterday and also the president's healthcare proposal. And And I want to start with the meetings with the Saudis, because it's certainly in another era, the idea of mass investment on a global scale amongst cultures that really have not much in common other than perhaps some temporary strategic interests, but nothing really fundamental or existential beyond that, in the hopes that that would secure enough mutual prosperity that the need to handle these kinds of differences and cultural issues on a violent scale via warfare would be irrelevant. That's a very League of Nations, globalist, United Nations. That's the Council on Foreign Relations playbook. I mean, they would tell you, and they have our whole lives. The Habsburgs had it right before World War I. They just didn't do it on a global scale. They should have done it more. Okay, and that's kind of what we're discussing doing with the Saudis now. So I would love to get all really ideological about this. On the other hand, we could really use the money. Secondly, if they're serious about joining the Abrahamic Accords, definitely helps us to further isolate extremism. My point being here that because we spent a generation not taking our foundations as a people seriously, we are cornered in so many various directions now that it's going to take, shall we call it, some creativity, maybe more so than rigidity, to get out. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, Steve, I don't know if I'm agreeing or disagreeing, but I just got to say what's very hard about judging some of the actions being taken the first year of this presidency is that it's hard to ascribe ideology when clearly business dealings loom very large. So, I mean, Trump has made it very clear on the domestic front, his biggest goal is AI data centers and crypto. Those two. And
I wish they'd get serious about the crypto, because my Bitcoin account, brother, is has fallen down, and I'm not sure it's going to get back up. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, your problem is you don't get the information when to pump and when to dump.
Yes.
But those who are, they're doing quite well. Trump has earned his family has earned billions of dollars off of that. You obviously have UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar invested in all this. So that brings domestic policy and foreign policy in concert. So is it sort of, this is the way we bring civilizations together in terms of a foreign policy vision, or is this just kind of mixing business with pleasure, business with governance? He's investing not just in, Saudi investments, but Saudi government investments are involved with Trump's personal family.
Is that kind of separation even possible in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I mean, probably not.
Okay,
but but the point is, Trump's bringing that to America, and so I think I don't mean to be cynical, but I think there's too many dots to connect that it's pretty obvious that looms larger than a strategic play. Now, obviously, he'll convince himself there is a strategic play here. One of the things I find disturbing about a lot of this is that we talk about the Abraham Accords as if it's some sort of punchline, because we viewed it as really one of the most successful aspects of the first term. But if I had to distill it, one of the successful aspects of it, or what it was in its essence, was bringing Arabs together with Israel, with America, under the notion that how to deal with the so-called Arab Palestinians is not the predominant area, wedge, or opportunity. It sort of sidelined and de-emphasized the issue under the clear understanding that say what you want to your Arab street, but the Jews aren't your biggest problem. And everyone knows that. Mm-hmm. The problem is that now MBS comes to the White House and, he says there better be a Palestinian state. And in return, we agree to sell them F-35s. Meaning the whole point was that they were getting off of that. That was a big part of the Abraham Accords, that they skirted that issue. And now he's returning like a dog returns to its vomit. They're returning to that. And again, getting us more entrenched in that. That is the last thing that as Americans we need to be on the hook for just to forge some sort of business deal with Saudi Arabia. One other point on Saudi Arabia before we go on, I just want to say, again, I don't mean to be too cynical, but Steve, I got to do this. We have caught Trump on tape with Zuckerberg, or Zuckerberg asking Trump, hey, should I say 500 billion? What amount? So a lot of this is hard to even get hyped up about in either direction because these numbers are fake, Steve. I mean, what are we up to? 21 trillion in investments. It's just become a joke. Obviously I don't want Saudi ownership of our critical infrastructure, but it's hard for me to really even get too excited about it because a lot of these numbers are made up.
The healthcare situation, Trump saying over the weekend, just bypass funding the subsidies that go to the insurance companies and give the money instead directly to the people. Okay? What I think is happening here is the Republicans are never repealing Obamacare, missed their window to do it anyway. It's too late. Okay. So I think he said that he's had some private conversations with Democrats who like the idea. I don't believe that. I think he's just throwing that out there. Democrats are this close. They suffered the huge hit for Obamacare on the front end a decade ago. They're this close to collapsing our entire system and getting what they did Obamacare for. They're not going to negotiate now. And so what I think this is about, I don't think this is about during this enrollment period. I think it's about next November's enrollment period, which coincides with the midterm elections. And for Trump to be able to have some kind of healthcare option where he can say, listen, I tried to give you guys the money directly, basically a universal health income. That's what I called it last hour. I tried to give you guys the money directly. Okay. Democrats sided with these greedy health insurance companies instead of caring about you, hoping that gives him some kind of triangulation messaging, because Republicans won't do this, but not like for the reason somebody like you would not want them to do it. Okay. Mm-hmm. They won't do it because they don't want to de-empower the corporations. Okay. All right. So he's left with, I'm aligned with people who won't go against the corporations. I'm up against people who want to collapse the system. And so I think this is just an attempt to craft some kind of a triangulation message for the next midterm election, which is going to roll around right at the time of the next re-enrollment period of 2026 to say, hey, I know costs are going up again, but I told you last year, an entire year I wanted to do this. And the Democrats wouldn't do it. They sided with the greedy health insurance companies instead. Your thoughts?
So, Steve, is your assumption that he puts this out and then Dems reject it and then Republicans reject their extension and they don't extend the current subsidies?
Or the Republicans do extend the subsidies, but the thing is so run amok, it doesn't quite provide the relief that everybody maybe thought that it was going to, on top of the overall affordability issue that we have right now. Yes.
Okay, because that's what I wasn't sure where you're headed, because I think it's more likely the latter, what you just said. If it were just a matter of, he wants to put something out against his back is against the wall, I understand it. But I think that they're actually going to give in to the Democrats. They might throw in a couple of reforms on slight amount of anti-fraud with some of these brokers that are enrolling phantom people that literally don't exist. But fundamentally, they're going to continue it. Look, I don't think Trump thinks too deeply about things anymore. I really do think when you catch him candidly in an interview and he says what he means about H-1B and the Chinese visas and look at the crypto and he forgot the term data center. So he says the AI buildings. I really think that's what's on his mind in the ballroom. I don't think he's thinking that deep down the path. Either way, whatever he is thinking, it's not going to help. Republicans are in a predicament that is just, wow. I mean, we're going to lose an election on things we don't even believe in. I mean, Democrats are starting to mobilize on the data centers. If you go back into the articles leading up to the Virginia elections, the Georgia elections, Democrats didn't just flip a seat in Georgia for the first time in 20 years. They did it by a 26-point margin, and they ran on the high electric bills being caused by data centers. A Democrat, I saw a Democrat delegate or candidate win a deep Republican seat in Virginia for the first time since realignment, and said, I'm sick of seeing family farms lost to data centers. Democrats see this play down the field, and increasingly they're going to use it. It's out in the open now. So I don't know how you combat that because, frankly, Steve, that's my messaging. Now, they're a bunch of frauds. They're not going to do anything about it either. But they are going to run on that. I don't think the healthcare thing is going to matter much because I do believe Republicans are going to extend it. And like you said, it's not going to. I mean, it's like a difference between a 500-foot home run and a 600-foot home run. We're so beyond the affordability threshold that I don't even know what you do at this point. The incumbent party is going to get slaughtered. I do also think, and again, if you want to say they're not going to do it, I agree with you. But the bottom line is, if you lock in the Obamacare coverage structure, so then that means that there's a monopoly and you're not going to get choice and competition. So if you give the money to the people, it might be one step removed, but at the end of the day, they could keep gouging and raising the premium every year, knowing you have to raise the subsidy because you have nowhere to go if you don't, repeal the scope of coverage mandates. That's why I'm not opposed to that line of thinking in a vacuum, but absent repealing, repealing the coverage mandates, it doesn't work. If you do repeal it, then you could say it's like food stamps, where, rather than setting up a food cartel, you just give people the money, go out and purchase the food, and it doesn't really distort the market as much as Medicaid and these healthcare programs do. So I'm not violently opposed to it. I just don't think it would solve the issue.
What do you think? Final thing. What would you say if Republicans instead decided, here's what we're going to do. We're canceling Obamacare, and anybody who cannot afford health care through their employer is eligible for Medicaid instead? What would you do if that was the plan?
Steve, here's the good news. Whether you agree with it or not, we essentially ate it already. We have 75 million people on Medicaid, even more if you include
exactly.
CHIP. We also have the VA. We already lost that battle, so I've argued that just
which is why I'm suggesting this policy. Yes.
Open up some sort of private market for people to pay, but a reasonable price, knowing that Medicaid is yay big anyway, for better or for worse.
Meaning Medicaid's already insolvent anyway. Okay. So why run a corollary auxiliary insolvent program alongside of it called Obamacare, which then just goes ahead and raises all the rates for the people that can afford their own health care to begin with? Okay. Why not just get rid of Obamacare, but we're going to have unlimited Medicaid expansion of some degree if you cannot afford it or your employer does not provide insurance? Why don't we just do that?
Yeah, and
so we only have one sunk cost instead of two, and then we're not passing on the second sunk cost to the middle class voters we actually need.
No, exactly. I mean, that's my idea. When I say repeal Obamacare, you would probably leave that in place. But it is the regs and monopolization. There's also other things like the ban on physician-owned hospitals. That's a very easy provision that they should be able to reform. I don't expect that to happen, Steve. It's going to be tough times. We're going to die for the other SOB's country, not our own.
Thank you, my friend. You were on
Happy
brand there.
Ride.
Yeah, there was some definite woe and lamentation in that conversation. Brought to you by our friends over at Chirp. You might need the Chirp Contour or Halo or the power massager after today's show. Wow. There were not too many spoonfuls of sugar helping any of the medicine to go down right now, man. But our friends at Chirp, their mission is simple: bring relief to as many people as possible so you can feel better, restore your energy, making self-care simple with doctor-trusted, FDA-cleared devices that work just like the clinic treatments, but without the expensive appointments. Aaron has done the Halo, raved about it. I've done the Contour, the power massager. Absolutely loved it, especially the power massager, by the way. All right, so hey, you can get 10% off site-wide right now at gochirp.com/Steve. Just like Birdie Chirp, CHIRP as in Paul. Gochirp.com/Steve. Use promo code Steve at checkout for 10% off site-wide. At gochirp.com/Steve, promo code Steve. All right, 90 seconds left, gentlemen. Final thoughts.
We could use the tariff revenue to pay for unlimited Medicaid expansion.
Yeah.
There's another selling point.
There's another selling point. I like that. So maybe we're workshopping something that is more solution oriented than the black pilling we did the first hour. Okay.
One problem with putting everybody who can't afford it on Medicaid is that unfortunately you're overestimating the number of people who can afford it, that actually want a market and aren't just addicted at this point to some level of socialism, whether they think they're pure capitalists or not. Also, I'm stuck also thinking we need to go further. This isn't just a healthcare thing. Honestly, it's just about citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
We should ask people about a different way of living.
Wait, I have to be healthy?
Yeah.
I have to take responsibility for what I ingest?
Yeah. So if you want all the availabilities of citizenship, you have to meet certain markers. We used to do this. I mean, in order to vote, property, things like this, now everybody, no matter how they live, I mean, we're not thinking even close to big enough on what it's going to take to turn this around. Daniel's right. You're right. We're stuck.
I'm just trying to come up with a solution to avoid losing the rest of the Trump presidency in next year's midterms, because we are stupidly owning 2 insolvent programs simultaneously when we can just have one insolvent program. I would just like to take that baby step, let alone get to what you're talking about. Go hard, Romans 8:28.